Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Sharon Bonney. I'm the CEO for the Coalition on Adult-Based Education, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our webinar today. We're doing Advocacy April, and we're really delighted because we have over 600 that are registered for this webinar, and we understand that this is a very important time as we're all dealing with the challenges of COVID. So before we get started, I'd love for you all just to take a moment to introduce yourself in the Q&A, tell us who you are and where you're joining us from. And then as we go along, you'll want to put questions that you might have in the Q&A. So you introduce yourself in the chat and you'll put your questions in the Q&A. We are delighted to have on with us today, Dan Griffith with Essential Education. Dan, would you like to say a few words?
Yes, thank you. Hope everybody's doing well today. Appreciate the opportunity to sponsor another webinar for COABE. Did you have a slide for me, I think, Sharon?
Yes, give me just one moment here. And Dan, while it's going to take me a moment to pull that up. So if you want to just go ahead for a moment.
Sure, absolutely. So we appreciate the opportunity to work with COABE on these webinars and provide some support to them so that we can deliver these free to you. Essential Education has done a number of things to prepare for distance learning and to help in that transition given the virus and what that's done to a lot of schools and adult education. We are launching this week a new website which will provide, there it comes, which will provide training for teachers on distance learning in a 6-part series. We also want to reinforce that all of our content is available in an anytime, anywhere, any device format. Which includes mobile learning on Androids and iPhones and iPads. We've done a lot for compliance with 508. So if you have students with disabilities, all of it's meant to work with screen readers and provide the support that you need there as well. And we're just thankful for the chance that we have to participate in this and provide COABE with some support. Thank you, Sharon. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Did you want to say anything about the next slide, Dan? Or are you all set?
No, I kind of addressed it. So yeah, we have a new distance learning webinar series that'll be up on our site. If you go to essentialed.com/educators, you can hit our contact us button and we'll get in touch with you if you'd like to learn more about any of these products or services.
And I just want to take a moment to really thank Dan for making time for this and for Essential Education for sponsoring so many webinars on behalf of our members. We've been able to present a number of webinars really quickly to help stand up resources for the field, and it's really been thanks to Essential Education for that. So thank you, Dan. We truly appreciate that.
You bet.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen one moment here, and I thank you all for bearing with me as I pull up our presentation. One moment, please. Okay. Hopefully you all can see this. Does that look good? Can you see that? Okay, so I'm really delighted to welcome today our presenters, Polly Smith, who's from Alaska, Larry Ann Torres, who's from California, and Lori Kirsten Joseph from Arizona. All of these ladies serve on our board of directors, and all of them have been involved in advocacy in some fashion or another. They all have also been involved in their state associations working at the state level. So they bring with them quite a bit of experience, and we're just delighted that they will be co-presenting with us today. So as you know, the Coalition on Adult-Based Education represents the system of 65,000 adult educators across the country who work with more than 1.5 million learners. So just a lot of adult educators out there who are really serving those that are most in need. And we all know that our programs often operate on a very tight budget with limited options. They're hastily ramping up to online and distance learning. So this COVID crisis has brought about the need to go sort of from the horse and buggy stage to the space age, right? Really quickly in the course of a couple months, if that. So that's really created quite a bit of a challenge for our field. Many of our adult learners do not have Wi-Fi access or a laptop, and many program administrators and teachers need technical support. which is why one of the reasons why we're here talking with you today, because we know that there is an incredible need out there. And many of our elected officials really want to know, how is COVID-19 affecting adult education in your community? They want you to be telling them because they're not sure, and there's many constituents that are contacting them, letting them know other ways that they're being impacted, but they want to hear from you. They want to hear from you, the adult educator, the administrator, your adult learners. And we think that it's really helpful to consider literacy, economic, and mental health impact as well. So they'll want to have questions, you'll want to be prepared to answer questions like, are the in-person adult education classes working? What additional funding or flexibilities are needed to better serve the adult education community during this time? Are adult learners able to access their public benefits such as SNAP? And what are their short-term and long-term needs? These are the sorts of questions that your legislators will want to hear from you on. I just want to really stress that we all can work together to help move the needle for funding. And it's really important that we do, because we are the voice of adult education. Coming together, we all can help move that needle for funding. We all have a really important role in this, and every voice is important. So right now we have 3 simple asks, which are 10 minutes of your time. Right now, COABE has 3 asks going. One is for the standard $692 million for the WIOA funding to keep our program doors open. Another is $1 billion for COVID-19 relief, and that's at the federal level. And the other is the stimulus funding. So there was $31 billion in stimulus funding, and $3 billion of which was pushed to the state level. That was pushed directly to your governor. And adult education is not written in that. So there's emergency education relief funding, but adult education is not explicitly written in there. So you need to contact your governor to let them know that adult education needs to be considered. And we've put together really simple tools for each of these. It really is 3 quick clicks. So we're going to go over that in a little later, but I did want to mention that up front here, because this takes about 10 minutes of your time. So if you do nothing else, this is something that's really important to do. Next, though, we want to talk about how we can make an impact with a minimal effort. Anyone can participate in our Advocacy April days, and anybody can do so from the comfort of their home. You don't have to go to Washington, D.C. You don't have to put that expensive trip there. You can do this from your own home. So it's really a big impact with minimal effort. So now I want to take a moment to turn this over to the lovely ladies that I introduced earlier on, which are Polly from Alaska, Lori from Arizona, and Larry Ann from California. They're going to share with you their stories of how on April 8th, when we conducted our first virtual advocacy day, they participated in different ways. So Polly, if you could unmute yourself and share your video so people could see you, that would be great. Hi, Polly.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for attending today, and I hope we can energize you and get you motivated to contact your legislators. I want to thank Sharon for inviting me to tell our advocacy story. I think she could tell by my excitement that we had really successful meetings. And so there are 4 things that I attribute our success to. And I'll just tell you that Alaska really isn't off the coast of Southern California, just in case some of you might be confused. But I attribute our successes to these 4 components. And the first is timing. And as Sharon's introduced, and we're all experiencing the changes that COABE has brought in the way we do business, the way we teach, the way we interact with each other, and the way we stay informed. I scheduled these meetings for myself to attend during the COABE Capitol Hill Day on April 8th. And then when that changed and we went virtual, the staff that I had prior meetings set up with were very accommodating, said, yes, we'll keep the meeting, we'll do it virtually. So that was very helpful, and they were excited to have the opportunity to stay connected, because once we lose our opportunity to be face-to-face in real time, we were a little worried about how that would work. But it was amazing. They were anxious to hear from us. They were anxious to hear how we were doing in Alaska. They were anxious on how they could help. We met in each other's homes, face to face, without even a table between us. And our eyes were looking at each other's eyes. I have never seen that kind of connection in any of my advocacy meetings before. We really are truly seeking answers together. The second is substance. Because we were meeting virtually, as Sharon said, I asked if any of my staff were interested in joining. Lori, Amy, and Marisol said they were. We planned our agenda and prepared carefully. Lori and Amy used the COABE legislative talking points document, which is excellent and has fantastic information and national statistics that you can find on the COABE website. They each selected 2 or 3 talking points that they felt strongly about and wanted to relate those to our legislative staff. Then, after each point that they made, they told a story connecting it to a local event, a local person, or our local program, or our local community. So they brought the national data into the our Alaskan lives, which I think was very substantive. Before our meeting, I had sent all of the staff that we were meeting with information from the COABE website on the national facts data sheet and our new COABE state data sheet, so that the staff had some idea of what adult education was and what we wanted to talk to them about and why we needed the additional funding. The third component was the breadth. And so, as Sharon said, many of us have been doing this advocacy work for several years, and I've been meeting with the same folks in the senator and congressman staff for 18 years. So we have a long respected history together, which is critical when you want to build advocacy and trust. Our meetings are always positive, but this time they were almost electric, like what was coming through all of this cyberspace was going right into our homes. And they were very, very excited about what we had to say, and they were very engaged with us. We were able to share our passions and our fears with honesty and with clarity because we had face-to-face. Our data was national, statewide, and local. This by level of involvement from the staff that I have not experienced in any prior meetings. The fourth component is the delivery. So by the third meeting, we were really, really very polished. But the first meeting was easy because this is someone that we knew and we trusted, and she trusted us. So I would open the meeting and thank the legislator staff and the senator or congressman for the support of adult education and the hard work that they have been doing for weeks prior to April 8th and the challenges in responding to the pandemic. I spoke briefly about COABE's mission and the asks that we are making. We've been advocating for additional funds for many years, but this particular time when I said we're asking for $1 billion additional dollars, not even an eyebrow was raised. So I'm thinking this is a perfect time, back to our timing, this is a time when we really prove the worth of adult education in our communities. That there is a strong urgency and a real need to add these funds. So each staff person was engaged, each staff person asked questions, and they brought their questions to us, which we were able to answer and close. At the end of Lori and Amy's presentation of their points and their stories, Marisol told her student's story. And Marisol is a staff person at the Alaska Literacy Program, and her story is a perfect conclusion to a successful meeting. It brought to light the true reality of what adult education does, and I think all of our staff folks recognize that. So I encourage you to connect soon with your legislative staff and work on bringing this reality to your state as well. Thanks.
Excellent, Polly. And I just want to mention, you know, Polly really was kind of giving us that local program emphasis. And that's what's so cool is that there in Alaska, you would be working just from the local program and you would be making such an impact on the Hill with your legislator from your own home. How cool is that?
Thanks.
Yes, excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. We appreciate it. And so next from here, we're going to hear from Larry Ann, who's from California, and she's really going to be showcasing how she works with her colleagues across the state and with a regional focus. Larry Ann.
Thank you, Sharon. Good morning from California. I've had the opportunity to participate in numerous Ledge Days here in California as part of the California Council for Adult Education. However, this was my third Capitol Hill Day with COABE, but my first advocacy experience conducted virtually, and it was a huge success. My Capitol Hill Day included a local representative, a state representative that's part of our state association, and myself as the regional representative. All the individuals that participated are representatives from California adult education programs, and I encourage all of you, as you start setting up your legislative day virtually, that you include all levels of adult education staff to get involved in advocacy. The virtual Capitol Hill Day provided for a much more relaxed setting. I did not have to rush between the Capitol building or the Cannon, Longworth, or Rayburn House office buildings in Washington, D.C. It was in the comfort of my office, just as you see me today. And it was very, just a great opportunity for each of us to be in our own offices communicating with our legislators. And again, it wasn't just by Zoom. I actually had one conference call with one of our local legislators. All appointments and visits were scheduled again and conducted virtually. What we did ahead of time, or I did ahead of time, is I shared the following documents with the representatives and staff prior to the virtual meeting. That way, if they had any questions, they can actually ask those prior to our actual day of our virtual day of our visit, or they could actually send me an email, and a couple of them actually did. I shared the COABE fact sheet, which is 5 pages. I shared my California state fact sheet that is titled the California Adult Education Program Fact Sheet. So those are the materials that I use to set up our virtual Ledge Days here for California. The California Council for Adult Education has been advocating for adult education for many years. In fact, advocacy efforts were revamped during the years of flexibility and included consistent and focused messaging to all levels of elected officials. Because of the advocacy efforts of the California Council for Adult Ed and CAIA, California legislators passed law that secured dedicated funding for California adult schools. Today, CCAE and CAIA are reimagining legislative advocacy and are hosting a live webinar at 3 o'clock to officially go virtual with their Legislative Day Reimagine campaign. So you'll have the opportunity to hear from Don Kepke, California Council for Adult Education's legislative and government budget advocate, as well as Victoria Bate, CCAE State Legislative Chair, Steve Curiel, California Council for Adult Education past president, and today's CAIA's vice president of legislative action, and our very own Sharon Bonney. So I encourage everyone to visit ccaestate.org for complete details on the webinar information for today.
Thank you, Larry Ann. So you're really saying that when you did your Capitol Hill Day visits on April 8th, you did this with that regional flair, but you also did it with working with colleagues from across the country. And then for this one, you're talking about really your state association then took this the next step further, which is that they're also holding a virtual Hill Day as well. Or I guess it's more than just a day, but this webinar is taking place today, and where they'll be showcasing and bringing their California members up to speed on how to use the tools and get acclimated to making virtual visits as well.
Yes, and I'm very happy to say that CCAE and CAIA are also using the Ignite software that COABE did, and COABE was so successful in scheduling all of these appointments and just using all the great tools that we have is through this Ignite software that we're going to be showing today.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that, Larry Ann. California's, the CCA has really been a wonderful partner with COABE, and we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So now I'd like to introduce you to Lori Kirsten Joseph. And Lori hails from the great state of Arizona. She's going to be talking about the state association, local program, and national focus. Lori?
Hi, everybody. Thank you to Sharon for the invite to be here today and share a little bit with all of you about our virtual Capitol Hill Day experience. And thank you all for tuning in. I'm really excited to share about our virtual Capitol Hill Day experience because it was so different than the face-to-face Capitol Hill Day experiences I've had in the past, and it went, to be honest, better than I had even hoped that it would go. Unlike Polly, who already had some Capitol Hill Day visits already scheduled, we weren't sure we were going to be able to participate in Capitol Hill Day, and so we set them up a little bit on the fly. And we're able to set them up with very short notice. Like Larry Ann, we had some local program representation, one of the local program directors from my program. We had our state association president, so the Arizona Association for Lifelong Learning's president was on the call. And then I was on the call to represent COABE and the national focus. So we had all three of those perspectives represented. Similar to maybe Larry Ann, we had some that were sort of this kind of virtual Zoom meeting. Actually, I think we did use Zoom. We've also used Hangouts. And then we had a couple of folks who were only able to join via conference call. Either way, it worked. We did share those fact sheets that the COABE fact sheets, both the state fact sheet and the national one. I saw in the chat there was a question about that. We're going to show you where to find those in a little bit. But the other thing we did was we made sure, and we always make sure, that we have student voice present when we do this kind of a Capitol Hill Day visit. Often when we are flying and doing a big trip to DC, we can't always get a student there. That's a big ask to fly a student across the country, and sometimes we can and sometimes we can't. When we can't, we bring maybe a student story and their photo along with us, but this virtual Capitol Hill Day made it very doable to get our learners engaged and have some of our student leaders present in the calls. It really was impactful to have a learner in each one of our Capitol Hill Day calls. I have to confess, sort of as it says on this screen right now, like I said, it was feeling like we're in the middle of this pandemic. How are we going to set up these calls? How am I going to get a team together? Will our elected officials have any time to meet with us? And in the end, it was perfect timing. It felt urgent. As we got on the phone with our elected officials, they had urgent questions for us. They were asking us, what do you need from us? What's happening on the ground? What are your students experiencing? It really struck me how hungry our elected officials and their staff were to engage with us and to have some dialogue so that they could understand what was happening for our programs. They had specific questions and big picture questions about whether it was about technology and do your students have the technology they need, or, you know, what, you're at a community college, what CARES Act funding do you think you're going to see? These were really important questions to help answer for them. And so that was really, really impactful. And then I just have to say that this ability to schedule virtually, to have to have a student with us in the meetings without a cross-country trip to DC, it felt like a real game changer to me. There's nothing like a face-to-face meeting, but the fact that you can schedule one of these meetings with fairly short notice and meet with an elected official in the middle of something that's really impacting our program, it felt like a really big change in my thinking about how we could do this. You can meet more frequently to foster that sort of ongoing relationship with your elected officials and with their staff. We always like to say, don't forget that if you only get to meet with the staffer and not the elected official themselves, that's okay. Those are great folks to meet with, and they're often the ones that we can build this long-term relationship with. And when you have a relationship, it makes it easier to dialogue when things are impacting the program on the fly. And it's easier to share with them on an ongoing basis what's happening in the field and what's needed. I do want to say that we were able to get a couple of students, we had 2 different students engaged in our Capitol Hill Day meetings, one of whom was on track to fly with us to COABE and be part of the COABE conference and Capitol Hill Day, which is great. And the other one who was able to participate would have never been able to leave his responsibilities here in Tucson long enough to fly with us to Capitol Hill, but he was able to do a virtual Capitol Hill Day meeting. And it was so impactful to have him participate because he is a great leader, and because after he gave his story, after he told his story, he got a little distracted because his kids were behind the computer holding up a sign that said, "Great job, Dad." And that made its way into this conversation with our elected official too. And it made a real impact on them to see our learners in their home environment with their kids cheering them on. It was very memorable for all of us involved. These students that I talk about are all student ambassadors, right? So you may have already heard about the award-winning ambassador program. COABE has done a beautiful job of investing in this ambassador program and bringing the ambassador training to our conferences and to folks across the country to help train up ambassadors. This is an advanced leadership training that helps train our adult learners in how to tell their story to people in power and how to facilitate meetings with elected officials and others to raise awareness about the impact of adult ed, the impact it's had on them and on their communities. So our program does ambassador training a couple times a year so that we always have new emerging ambassadors, student leaders who are ready and interested in having this kind of a meeting with elected officials. They're great for, they're ready and interested to meet with local elected officials, with your state elected officials, and certainly with folks on the national level as well. And so these learners were well prepared and ready to share their story and to answer questions about their experience in adult basic ed. So that's a little bit about what our Capitol Hill Day visits looked like here in Arizona. I also want to take a minute and just share a little bit. I mentioned CARES Act funding earlier, and certainly we've all heard maybe about different aspects of CARES Act funding that's helping and supporting folks in our communities. I just want to touch on one that Sharon mentioned earlier one more time, and that is that the funding that's coming to our states, that our governors are getting CARES Act funding to support education within the state, and that there's some flexibility, that each governor has some flexibility in how they're going to spend that money. And although adult ed is certainly something that they can spend it on, they won't know that they need to if folks don't reach out to their state offices and let them know what the needs are in the community and what we're seeing with our learners. So as you're thinking about scheduling visits or calls with folks during Advocacy April, think about also those state level offices that you might set up a visit with someone from your governor's office or from your state office to talk a little bit about adult ed and the needs in the community right now. So at a minimum, if you can't schedule one of those visits, I want to encourage you, just as Sharon mentioned earlier, to use the COABE Take Action tool and Take Action email to reach out to your state offices and let them know that this money could be spent on adult ed and the needs in the field. I think that's a good segue to what Sharon's up for next.
Thank you so much, Lori. So just to recap, Lori, you talked a lot about that student piece as well, and how adult learners who typically would not be able to come to DC with you were able to talk right from their home. And that was very valuable to that legislator to see them in their setting. And you talked about how it was actually really valuable, and there was kind of that instant need when the legislator would see you, they really wanted to connect with you and hear what was going on in your program. So I just want to recap that, because I feel like, originally when we were talking about our April 8th Capitol Hill Day, we were going to bus people from Baltimore down to Washington, D.C., and we had hundreds of people signed up. Well, what we're hoping to do is have that same push out for Advocacy April, where hundreds and hundreds of people are contacting their legislators. It's a really critical time for our field right now. And as you see, we have these 3 asks where it won't take you more than 10 minutes of your time to reach out to legislators over email. But there's also the second component of setting up Hill Day visits, and we're going to show you how to do that. So thank you, Lori, for your piece in this. We really appreciate hearing from you and how you were able to accomplish this for your state.
Thanks, Sharon.
Great. So we're going to take a minute here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a minute, and I'm going to share with you how you can go in and you can take action right here. Give me 1 second. So if you go to, let me just share my screen again. I apologize, everybody. I'm kind of working between a new laptop and this software. So we have here, if you go to COABE.org and you click on legislation, the Legislative Center, you're going to see that there's 3 asks here. Okay, so www.coabe.org, and then click on legislative. It'll take you here. There's 3 asks. And when you click on them, you're going to see what Lori was just talking about, which is that we have this ask here for the $1 billion of funding for COVID-19. Now, do we think we're going to get this? Well, we wish and we hope so, but we may not. Either way, you go in and you put your information in here. And this is our ask at the federal level. And when I hit submit, it brings me here to an editable screen. It's got my subject in here, my message, and all these people who are going to receive this email with 3 quick clicks. So I could take off President Trump or Vice President Pence if I wish to, or any of my legislators. But for now, this is who will receive this email from me. And then as well, we already have a pre-written template here. You can change this if you wish. You can add in your own specific data sheets if you wish to, but this is put together for you so that it's easy to use. And then you have your closing and you hit submit. And it's just like that. That's who it goes to. It's done. I have taken action for that. Then I can come here, and this is where I'm taking action for the $31 billion in emergency education relief funding. I come in here. Here again, my information, now that I've added myself in here, it's going to remember me every time. I don't even have to retype my information. I click submit. Now this is going to go to the state level, to my governor and to my state level legislatures. Here again, editable subject line and editable messaging. And then I can hit submit. Can you see that, Larry Ann and Polly? Are you able to? I just realized that it might not be showing on the screen.
Yes, we can see it. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, my pleasure. So then I hit submit. Then I come back here. These are all the people who've received it. I come back over here. Now I'm taking action for the $692 million of WIOA federal funding. This is the funding that goes out to more than 2,000 plus federally funded adult education programs across the country. Here again, same sort of thing. Notice I didn't even have to retype the information. It's all there. I hit submit. Here's all the people who are going to get this email talking about the $692 million of funding that's needed, how we're hoping to serve the 43 million people out there that could use our services. I hit submit and it's done. It goes. Here's all the people that went to. So those are, when we talk about those 3 asks that we have, we made them as quick and easy as possible for you to take action. And that's how you can do so that way. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen for just a moment and go back to my PowerPoint, which is here, and share my screen. So we've explored how we can take action with our 3 quick clicks. And I'm going to share it this way. So I apologize, everyone. It's a new screen. Okay. So now I'm going to turn this over to Larry Ann. Larry Ann?
Thank you so much, Sharon, for demoing that. COABE has also created an Advocacy April Master Guide. So I would encourage all of you to download that action guide or that master guide and utilize it to schedule your meetings. So it's a multiple step process, so we encourage you to start now. So log on to the Ignite and enter your home street address to set up your meetings. And again, you could set those up in a variety of ways, but use our Ignite software tool to send your legislators an email to let them know that you're participating in Advocacy April and would like to do a phone or a video call. And again, you can do that in a variety of ways. Go to their individual websites to locate the contact information for an education staffer or the aide responsible for workforce or education issues. And then second, we encourage you to make sure that you're, aware of the 3 talking points. So be aware that COVID-19 is dominating the staff time. So express their gratitude that Congress is drafting and passing COVID-19 relief packages, but be flexible on when to meet with them virtually. Again, a couple of those that I scheduled time to meet with were only able to meet with me via phone and not actually via a Zoom or some type of video. The other thing is step 3 is to confirm your meeting. So offer to meet as a phone or video call, and again, be flexible on when to meet. So ask for a 20-minute appointment and plan for a 30 to 45 time frame. Make appointments for between 11 and 4 p.m. and read the sample email to the staffer, and that is included in the guide as well. So we encourage you to do that. Sharon, if you'll go on to the next screen. And then step 4 is log your appointments. There is a link on our website and also in the master guide that will take you to a place where you can log your appointments. This is really important for us so that we can see who those individuals, which individuals were contacted, and then those that we also need to follow up with. So step 5 is to complete the feedback form, which is, there's also a link not only on the website, but also in the master guide to be able to log those. And that way we'll know who to follow up with. And step 6 is to advocate through social media. Make sure to use the hashtags, hashtag COABE, hashtag adult ed, hashtag adult educate and elevate, and hashtag advocacy April. And those are also not only in this slide, but also included in the master guide as well. I encourage everyone to take action. It is easy and worth the experience to keep adult education at the forefront. And it is really important to do. We have seen a big difference in California and in our adult education programs across the state. If you have any questions or need any help, again, please reference the master guide or call any of us here at COABE. Each of you have a regional rep, and I would encourage you to contact us. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry Ann. Appreciate you walking folks through that. I don't know if we should actually take a moment to go to the website and look at that. So I can bring everybody there in just a few minutes. But on this next slide, we want to talk about being prepared. So go ahead.
Yeah, so a word or two about getting ready or preparing for your meeting. So Larry Ann did a great job of sort of talking through what the steps might be to set up the meeting, but we also want you to do some thinking about what will it look like and feel like on the day of. So encourage everyone who's participating in the call to find a quiet place and set that up in advance. We tested out all of our technology in advance with all of us who would be on the call, minus the folks in DC, but with the team here from Arizona, including the students. We wanted to make sure everyone felt really comfortable in the technology, whether that was a conference call or Zoom or Hangouts or whatever you're going to use. Test it out. We did a practice meeting in advance with our whole agenda laid out, and we walked through it. keep in mind, as Larry Ann said, that their time is super limited. I've had 30-minute meetings, I've had 15-minute meetings. You kind of need to be ready to go on the fly. Leave a little time for some questions later at the end. We've touched on the need to be prepared to answer information about COVID-19 and how it's affecting your learners. That reminder I mentioned earlier, if it's a staff member that you're meeting with instead of an elected official, that's fine. They are the folks who are gathering the information that the elected official needs to know. So often you get a little bit more time if you get a staffer, and you get to continue to build that ongoing dialogue and relationship. And we like to remind everybody, don't forget to make the ask. I know it's really important that we're there and we share information about what we're doing, and we share what's needed in the field, and then for sure point to these asks that COABE has advanced. Also, some other last tips, make sure that during your call that you introduce everyone in the call, especially in this virtual environment. You're going to want to make sure that they hear who everyone is and maybe what role they have, especially if you're listening in and not on video. It's a good practice no matter what, but make sure you do that. I like to start the meeting by thanking the elected official for what they already do in support of adult ed. There's been this bipartisan support for WIOA throughout, and so it's real simple to say thank you all for the support you've already given to the field of adult basic ed. And then that can be a good entryway into, like, we're here to talk about this need for increased funding or funding during this crisis. So make that ask. Leave time for the staffer to ask questions toward the end. They often have questions. And I should say here, be ready to move through the agenda you planned, maybe not in the order you planned, because often they'll ask questions throughout that will kind of prompt you moving to different parts of your agenda and back around. So be ready to be flexible. It's great to wrap up by asking if you can follow up with any additional information or help for them, or maybe ask them to come visit your program when they're back in district. It's always a great way to follow up, is to have them come see the program in action. And maybe this last bullet should have been first, but make sure that you're helping any adult learners who participate, or really anyone who's participating in the call, to be prepared. So if you have somebody who's new to this process, make sure you talk them through what the call might look like, what the meeting might look like, have everybody practice, make sure your learners know what you're asking of them and how long they'll have to tell their story, and just what they can expect. So those are some tips to keep in mind as you schedule your meetings.
Thank you so much, Lori. Really appreciate that. So next we're going to talk about our data sheets. COABE put together a national data sheet, which we worked together with NASDA, the National Association for State Directors of Adult Education. And that, I'm going to show you where that's located. And we also have statewide data sheets that are available for each state. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen real quick and show you where you would locate these, but these are also available on our advocacy master guide. So one second here while I pull this up. So hopefully you all can see this here. This is our Advocacy April page, and when you go to the home page, coabe.org, there's right at the top, there's a slider that says Advocacy April. We have a number of different things here. So when we look at our state fact sheets, you come in here and you put in your state. So let's just say I'm going to pull up the state of New York because that's where I reside. I click on the map, and it brings me right down to here, to my specific state fact sheet. It's also available. I can download it as a PDF if I'd like to. This is available for everybody. So whatever state you're in, you would just put that there at the top of the map, or put that on the map, and that will bring that up for you. Okay, so that's that. Then we also have the national fact sheet. And this has information at the national level. It's 2 pages long. It just talks about funding and our need and our results, what we do, how we equip educators across the country, and why what we do is so valuable and so important. So those are the two different sorts of fact sheets that we have available. I do want to give a shout out to, we put together a team of local program administrators who really helped us think through what this program fact sheet should look like. We wanted it to be super simple and easy for anybody to be able to understand and explain to their legislators. So we'd love your feedback after you use them. We'd love to hear what your thoughts are. If you have any questions or if you felt that it was in fact useful. So for example, we talk about the funding and then what that works out to in terms of the funding per adult learner. This is usually a really impactful number right here, because when when legislators see that typically on average, we receive so much less per pupil for adult learner than those in elementary education, for example, yet we're working with those who have the most barriers to employment. It really does seem to make an impact there. Also, we of course list out those who achieve their high school credentials, the individuals improving one's skill gain, lots of really great information here. So that's where you'll find that information. And again, on this same site, this is where you'd be able to schedule your appointment with your legislator, send an email to schedule that appointment. It's right here. And as you see, all my information is in here again, so it's super easy. And I can insert my time frame for when I'd like to meet with them and submit that. And that's how I was able to schedule 3 meetings that I had with my legislators right through this really easy to use tool right here. As well, we have a number of other interesting and hopefully useful tools that are available. So we have past webinars that we have archived for you. We have a short 10-minute tutorial here as well that we've organized for you that you might find useful. But I think the biggest one I'd really recommend that you look at is this master guide, which Larry Ann had talked about. There's so much information on here. And I apologize as I'm getting used to this new laptop. So lots of great information in here. It talks about everything from, the 1.5 million learners, how it's kind of broken down in terms of English language learners, ex-offenders, those with learning disabilities, migrant farm workers, long-term unemployed, homeless, and runaways. I mean, when you look at this information, you really see how we are serving those who have the most barriers to employment, right? And as you keep scrolling, there's just more information, but you'll see once again, all of these links, hot links and whatnot. So here's the link when you want to log your appointment. So I've gone ahead, I've set my appointment, I put it in here, and when I click proceed, it's going to show me, so I'll actually walk through this real quick so you can see it because it's really easy to use. And then I'm going to hit proceed. And now let's say I have a meeting with Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. I could put that in here and then I hit proceed. And it's going to ask me my appointment date, my appointment time, who I'm meeting with, whether the member is actually attending or not, the meeting location. And I just hit proceed. And then that goes into a giant scheduler that COABE then is able to say, my goodness, we had an additional 300 meetings that were scheduled. And it really does help us when we're talking big picture, when I'm talking with legislators myself, but it also helps us to know how many meetings were actually scheduled. Then we can come back in here. Once you've had that meeting, you can come in here and tell us how that meeting went. So here again, I can enter my information. I hit proceed. I could say, here it is. Now it's going to ask me, to talk about any issues or questions or comments, what those interactions were like with my legislator. And it's just great information. It helps us, it helps you as well. So those are some tools that we have available to you on our legislative page for Advocacy April. So I've got a few more slides to get through here. Very curious if we have some questions there in the Q&A. Hopefully they're coming in and hopefully you all are finding this helpful. Okay, so here, let me share my screen again. Okay, so we talked about our fact sheets. We talked about our talking points. So tips for the Hill. I cannot stress enough that you are the expert. Members and staff want to learn from you. They want to hear from you what's taking place there, what you're experiencing now, especially with COVID-19, how it's made it even more difficult for you. They want to hear about that. Feel free to localize your story. Members and staff want info from their states and districts, so please feel free to localize that. and of course, personalize your story. And there's really no better way to do that than to talk about what you're experiencing and the story of the adult learners that you know. It's great if you can bring an adult learner with you on that virtual Hill Day visit. So next steps, just if you do nothing else, please send those quick fire emails that I showed you. If you can, set up your legislative visits for Advocacy April, and then share the feedback with us and let us know how you felt it went. We also just wanted to mention that the census is really an important part of this. Larry Ann, would you like to take a few minutes to talk about the census?
Sharon, thank you. Yes, this is probably more than anything, the most important thing right now for all of us is to make sure that we're getting the census information out there to all of our adult education students and anyone really out there in our community. I know here in California, our California adult schools, we're going to have our doors open so that individuals could come in, get their questions answered, and complete their census on some of our adult education campuses. Because of the COVID-19, that's not happening. However, it doesn't mean that we can't get the information out. I would encourage every one of you to please make sure that when you're communicating with your adult ed learners and their families, to make sure that they have the information, the link to go and to complete their census. This is so important. I know right now in California, we're just over the halfway mark in getting census data back, and this will truly impact all of us in some way, not only in adult education, but the services that will impact our adults in our community. So again, I would encourage all of you to make sure that you visit the census, the 2020 census.gov website for information and the tools needed to get out to your individuals. And you could do this through your individual websites, through any news or communication that's going out to your adult ed learners. So again, take the time to do this. It is so worth it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Larry Ann. That's a really good point. And so many of our adult learners are afraid of the census. And so that's sort of our job, right? To help them and then educate them that they don't have to be afraid and that it's actually really helpful information. Because as you see, it really does impact the number, well, lots of different things, but it impacts how many seats you have, our state has in the House of Representatives. It impacts how much funding we're going to receive in public education and housing and roads and so much more. I put up here New York because I'm from New York, so you can see that one right there, but really great information to have. So thank you, Larry Ann. Larry Ann had asked us to make sure we included this. I should also mention that Census.gov is a national partner of the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. So they will be doing some more webinars for us as well and sharing more information out. So before we go to this question here, I just also wanted to mention that COABE also has a script for state associations, and with special thanks to Regina Suit, who is our student ambassador chair. She'd put together some wonderful information. So if you are a state association president, or if you're someone who's planning to work with your state association, we have some information in a special package that has been put together specifically for you. So that is also on that legislative site that I showed you as well. So now I'd like to just go to these questions that we have here and ask, what do you feel elected officials really need to hear? You know, as you think about that, maybe you could put that in the chat box and let us know what your thoughts are on that. Lori, did you have anything you wanted to say here?
You know, I just wanted to note that we've talked a little bit about this today, and I too would love to hear from folks on the chat. But I think about it in two ways for these visits. We want to be sharing with our elected officials. They need to hear what the great work that we're doing and the impact that we're having, the positive impact we're having on our students and their families in the community. And we need to share with them what the challenges are in this kind of a time to make sure that they're hearing from us about what our students are experiencing and need. So those are the two things that popped up for me. I would love to see what others put into the chat.
Great, thank you. And then I believe we had one other question we were sort of thinking about when we were talking earlier today. what is most helpful to you in your outreach to legislators. So we would love your thoughts on that as well. And then ladies, I believe that you have been looking at the Q&A. So Larry Ann, Lori, or Polly, would any of you like to take some of the questions that are there in the Q&A? Because for some strange reason, I cannot access it right now. And I think it's because of my new laptop, so I apologize.
Okay, so I was just looking at a comment that said, we need computers and internet hotspots and training for students, please. And yes, I know we do all across the country. I'm hearing that more and more. And this is one of those talking points that I would really encourage you to make sure that you're sharing with your, not only your elected officials, but also your individual districts as well. And we need to know this. So make sure that you're sharing that with your state adult ed leaders so that they know what your needs are in the state. I know here in California, we have a survey that has gone out to survey adult ed administrators to find out what is happening during this time of COVID-19. And so I would just encourage you to share that information, but we can also follow up with you as well. So that was one of the things on there.
Larian, can I jump in on one of them?
Please, yes.
I'm seeing a comment from one of my colleagues, Laura Porfirio, and I want to thank Sharon for the shout out to Regina Sood. I get to work with both of these, have gotten to work with both of these great advocates for adult ed. And Laura made an important point that as you use the tool to email to set up appointments for elected officials, if you don't hear back through those emails, it's perfectly acceptable, and sometimes for some offices preferable that you make a call. And if you call the office to set up meetings, you may find that that has some additional success. So don't hesitate to, if you haven't heard back, follow up with another email or follow up with a call to get those visits set up. If you haven't heard back, it doesn't mean they don't want to meet with you. They're just busy.
Okay. So I see a number of questions here now that I stopped sharing my screen. Now I can see them. I'm going to put in the chat box for everybody the location for the various tools that I used. So I just want to answer kind of in a broad scope there that I'll put that in right now. And then Polly, would you take the question from Paul Germo regarding, are there sensitive topics that arise in your interaction with policymakers and funders? Do you think you could respond to that one?
Sure. Yeah, usually when you meet with legislator or staff, it's always very positive. They always nod and say, yes, 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 you're very valuable. Very rarely have I had any kind of pushback, but we are advocating, and so we're not lobbying, we're not trying to push a certain perspective, but we're trying to show our value. I did have one fun time with my congressman who said, oh, all immigrants just sit around and do nothing. And this was a long, long time ago, and he has never ever said that again to me. And now he's very much aware of the value of what immigrants do for our community and how we cherish everyone. So, but that was really the only time I've ever had any kind of pushback or uncomfortable situation from a staffer. Usually they're trained to be very receptive and very responsive, and they nod even though you know they're never going to do anything. But they're very positive. So it's not very intimidating. Actually, they're very good at making you feel welcome.
I would just like to add too that if there's ever a question that can't be answered, or you're not sure how to answer that question, just let the local, that individual that you're meeting with know that you'll get back to them with that information. And that's what you can also put in the feedback form. That way we could have someone from COABE actually do a follow-up and get them the information, whether it's just a question being asked or some data that they actually need. And we can actually follow up with that legislative official.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions that you feel we should answer here?
I like to just note that I see that David Rosen asked the question about how are our states going to use the new PAC data. And I think it's just great to highlight it here as another resource for data to share with your local and state and national representatives to help them see how big this need is. So if you haven't gone to check out that data yet, it allows you to really drill down to even the county level to talk about the literacy needs in your area. It's a great resource.
And it's also particularly timely because we're trying to make information understandable and when you start adding up the percentages of folks who don't have access to that information, and even if they do, they don't understand it. So I really think it's a great time for it to be coming out and sharing with our folks who are doing the public service announcements from our states and from our mayor's office. Plain language, plain language. I think they're finally getting it after 6 weeks, but we're still working on it.
It really is a great tool, and that was, I believe, put together by the American Institute for Research. And they're just a fantastic, really reputable partner in the field. So if you have the time and you'd like to drill down to that local level data, it is an excellent tool to use. We do have a question here. Will the PowerPoint be available? Absolutely, we'll certainly share that. Everybody also that participated in this webinar will receive a certificate of attendance. I wanted to mention that. And we also need to launch a short poll, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. And while we're launching that, if you could just let us know what your thoughts are, if you felt that the webinar met your expectations or not, we would love that information back. Are there any other questions, ladies, that you see here that we should take a shot at before we thank everybody for their time?
So Sharon, David Rosen also had talked about not having reliable internet access, and there's a Digital Equity Act that was introduced in Congress in 2019 by Senator Murray in Washington State. And he's asking the question, is this a good time to advocate for this legislation? So I will respond back to him, but I think that's something that our legislative team could look at and discuss, and then look at the possibility of following up on.
Right. I can tell you that we are aware of that. Our concern has been the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act and funding for that to make sure that our programs can keep their doors open. Just to be honest, that's what we've really honed in on and focused in on. And, you know, it's been successful having that laser focus, because as I think folks who are joining us on the webinar know, you know, until we started doing this, every year either our funding was cut or it was frozen. And then when we started really focusing and coming together around this mantra, educate and elevate, and specifically around WIOA funding, that's when we saw the funding cut stop, and we were then able to add 75 million collectively together as a field. So that's the approach we've taken to date, but we are aware, and we're constantly approached by organizations asking us kind of to sign on other issues and other funding requests, and we always consider them. And we are a partner with a number of organizations in the field that have a lot of really great work going on. So that's kind of a long way to say right now, based on what we've discussed internally as a public policy group and with our public policy firm, we've decided to stay really focused in on the WIOA funding for now. But when you talk with your legislators, letting them know, you know, that this is a really huge need for the field, you can certainly bring that up. And we also talk in our fact sheets about how 28 million adults in our field, in our country, do not have the Wi-Fi access that they need, and that there's a digital divide. So that is also in our national fact sheet as well. So with that, it looks like we're just about, well, we're over the 3 o'clock hour. So thank you everybody for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and we hope that you will take action for adult education, that you'll set up those visits with your legislators. And if you do nothing else, that you will click on those 3 quick clicks and send those emails to your legislators. Thank you, everyone. Bye now.